The air in Babylon was heavy, thick with heat and whispers. Alexander the Great, conqueror of the known world, lay on a golden bed in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. His chest rose and fell like a man fighting an invisible enemy. The court was silent. Then, suddenly, he asked for a scroll and ink. The generals glanced at one another. This was no ordinary request. They had seen him give orders from his sickbed before, but this time, there was something in his eyes. A fire, a desperation, almost fear. Alexander was not merely dictating orders for the next day. He was writing something no one was supposed to see. Outside, the city buzzed. Merchants shouted. Soldiers drank wine in the streets. The people of Babylon believed their king was merely ill from fever, that he would rise again and lead them on the next campaign. But inside the palace walls, the mood was different. Alexander's companions, the Diadochi, knew something was wrong. The doctors had no cure. Priests had sacrificed animals to every god, yet the omens were grim. And now their king was writing a letter with his own trembling hand. It took hours. Servants kept bringing fresh lamps as the night deepened. The wax on the table melted into pools. The generals waited in the hall, restless, their swords clinking against their armor. Each one of them knew that if Alexander died, the entire empire, from Greece to India, might tear itself apart. But what was he writing? And why was he sealing it with his own signet ring, refusing even his closest friends to look at it? Some whispered that it was a letter to Aristotle, his old teacher, revealing the greatest secret of his campaigns. Others believed it was a message to Olympias, his mother, instructing her to protect his infant son. A few even thought it was a map, a final command for a conquest that would go beyond Persia, beyond India, to lands no Greek had seen. But no one could know for sure. When the letter was finished, Alexander pressed the seal and handed it to a trusted page. His voice was so weak that only those closest heard him speak. "This," he said, "is not for you. It is for the future." Then he ordered the letter to be hidden, guarded until the right moment. And no one, not even Perdiccas, his most loyal commander, dared ask him again. That night, Alexander's fever worsened. The palace was lit by torches. Priests filled the halls with smoke, chanting prayers. And in a dark chamber, somewhere within Babylon, a single scroll lay hidden under heavy guard, a message sealed with the symbol of the greatest king the world had ever seen. What did it say? Was it a confession? A prophecy? A command that could change the fate of the empire? Whatever it was too dangerous for anyone to read aloud. By morning, Alexander could no longer speak. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The generals filed past his bed one by one, waiting for him to name his successor. But Alexander only whispered something that many claimed they could not hear. Some swore he said, "To the strongest." Others claimed he said nothing at all. And then, the conqueror of the world was gone. In the confusion that followed, the mysterious scroll vanished. Some believed Perdiccas took it. Others accused Ptolemy, who later fled with Alexander's body to Egypt. There were even rumors that the letter was burned, that its contents were too dangerous to let survive. But if that were true, why do fragments of its message still appear centuries later in strange places, in dusty libraries, on half-burnt papyri, in the letters of philosophers and kings? Whatever was inside that letter, it was powerful enough to haunt the men who had once followed Alexander into battle. And as the empire began to fracture, as brother turned against brother and general against general, some whispered that the letter had cursed them all, that Alexander's final words were the spark that ignited the wars that destroyed his empire. What could one message hold that was worth so much blood? The palace of Babylon fell into chaos after Alexander's death. His generals, the Diadochi, gathered in the torchlit hall, their faces grim. The greatest empire the world had ever seen, from Greece to the edge of India, was suddenly without a king. And somewhere, hidden in that palace, was the sealed letter. The message meant for no one's eyes. The tension was unbearable. Perdiccas, the man Alexander had trusted most, stepped forward. He claimed the letter had been given to him. He alone would guard it until the army could decide what to do. But not everyone believed him. Ptolemy, tall and calculating, crossed his arms. "How do we know," he asked, "that this letter is what you say it is?" Perdiccas said nothing. He only tightened his grip on the scroll case. Then the accusations began. Seleucus muttered that Perdiccas was hiding Alexander's true choice of successor. Craterus whispered that the letter might hold orders naming a single ruler, perhaps Perdiccas himself. The tension in the hall grew so sharp it felt like a sword's edge. One wrong word, one rash movement, and blood would stain the palace floor. In the days that followed, the arguments became open threats. Some generals wanted Aridaeus, Alexander's half-brother, crowned as king. Others wanted to wait for Roxana to give birth to Alexander's son, a son who might never even live. But through it all, the question of the scroll remained. What did it say? Why had Alexander written it at all? Perdiccas eventually gave a command that silenced the whispers. He would not open the letter in public, but he swore it would guide him in every decision. And so began the first split in Alexander's empire. Within weeks, Babylon was no longer safe. Perdiccas held the royal court. But Ptolemy gathered his men and left the city, heading west. When he vanished, the letter vanished with him. Some said Perdiccas had kept it. Others swore Ptolemy had stolen it during the night. Whatever happened, the result was the same. No one could agree on who should rule. Soon, the streets of Babylon echoed with the sound of marching boots. The first of the wars of the Diadochi had begun. As the fighting spread, rumors about the letter grew more dangerous. One tale claimed it contained Alexander's plan to invade Arabia, that he had named generals for a campaign that would never happen. Others said it was even bolder, that Alexander had ordered the conquest of Rome, a city still small but rising fast. But the most shocking rumor of all came from a soldier who had once guarded the king's chamber. He swore that the letter contained a list of men Alexander wanted punished, men who had betrayed him. And that list included some of the most powerful generals in the room. If the rumor was true, the letter was no longer just a relic. It was a death sentence waiting to be opened. One night, a messenger was caught leaving Babylon with a sealed copy of something. He was tortured, but he died before naming who had sent him. Some said the letter was being secretly copied and sent to distant allies. Others said it had been destroyed, but there was no proof. By the end of that year, the empire was at war with itself. The men who had once followed Alexander into battle against Persia now fought each other. Cities burned. Armies starved. Thousands of soldiers, men who had marched to the ends of the earth, were cut down by their own brothers. And still, no one knew for certain what Alexander's last words on that scroll had been. Somewhere, perhaps in Egypt under Ptolemy's watchful eye, or hidden in a Babylonian vault, the letter waited. And every man who sought to rule in Alexander's name feared the same thing, that one day it would resurface and destroy him. As Perdiccas prepared to march east, he is said to have opened the scroll once more. No one saw what was written inside. But his face, hardened by war, changed. He looked at his men and said, "Alexander gave us a world. Now we must decide who is worthy of keeping it." Then he ordered the march that would lead to his own death. What could have been written on that parchment to drive men to slaughter each other? What secret could ignite a war that would tear apart the largest empire in history? Whatever it was powerful enough to outlive the man who wrote it and to haunt those who tried to follow him. The war among Alexander's generals raged for decades. Armies shifted like shadows across the old empire, carving it into pieces. Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, India. Each man claimed to carry Alexander's legacy. But behind their banners, behind their endless battles, there was always the whisper of a single object. The scroll. The letter written in Babylon. Some said it had been lost in the fires that consumed the city. Others swore it traveled with Ptolemy into Egypt, hidden in the vaults beneath Alexandria. A few even claimed it was stolen by Persian merchants, carried east, and buried in some forgotten desert shrine. But the strangest stories came from the men who fought in those wars. They spoke of generals changing course in the middle of campaigns, as if following a secret order. They spoke of soldiers executed for no reason, men accused of being named in Alexander's final words. It was as though the letter was still alive, haunting the empire from the shadows. Centuries later, a fragment appeared in the writings of a Greek historian. It was said to be a copy of Alexander's final plans. The words shook those who read them. Sail west. Conquer the rising power. Bring the world beneath one rule. Many believed the rising power was Rome. If true, Alexander had seen beyond his own empire, beyond Persia, beyond India, and recognized the city that would one day conquer the known world. Had he lived just a few years longer, Rome might have been crushed before it ever rose. History itself might have been rewritten. But there were darker fragments, too. One described Alexander's fear that his own companions would betray him, that the men who shared his table would one day tear apart everything he built. In that sense, the letter was prophecy, and it came true with chilling precision. By the time the dust settled, Alexander's empire was gone. In its place stood the kingdoms of his generals, Ptolemaic Egypt, Seleucid Asia, Antigonid Macedonia. Each claimed to honor his memory. Each built statues of him. Each minted coins with his face. But none ruled the world he had dreamed of. The letter vanished from history again. Its location unknown. Its contents uncertain. Some historians dismiss it as myth, a tale invented to explain the chaos after Alexander's death. But then, why do small references to it keep appearing? Why do Roman writers, centuries later, speak of a lost command of Alexander that foretold Rome's greatness? Why did Byzantine scholars whisper of a scroll kept hidden in Alexandria, burned only when the great library fell to ash? Perhaps the letter never existed. Perhaps it was only a story, born in the fevered nights of Babylon. But if it did exist, if somewhere, buried deep in forgotten ruins, a sealed scroll still bears the mark of Alexander's ring, then inside lies the voice of a man who dreamed of ruling not just the world he knew, but the one yet to come. And maybe, just maybe, that letter was more than strategy. Maybe it was a warning, a final message from a dying king to all who would follow him. Do not trust the men who sit at your side. For power does not unite. It consumes. If those were his words, then Alexander knew the truth in his last days, that his greatest enemy was not Persia, not India, not Rome. It was his own friends. And so, the question remains, was Alexander's final letter a plan to conquer Rome, a prophecy of betrayal, or a curse cast upon his heirs? No one can say for sure. But perhaps the real mystery is this. If that scroll had survived, if its words had been obeyed, would we be living in a world not ruled by Rome, not shaped by Christianity, but still carrying the seal of Alexander the Great?